Hi, the topic that I chose to research is the ambient air pollution in China and the Philippines and its effect on respiratory illnesses. Ambient air pollution is identified as a major health risk for many. It often causes stroke, heart disease, lung cancer, and chronic and acute respiratory diseases. The entirety of China and the Philippines hosts coal and power plants, busy streets, and industrial processes that disperse dangerous chemicals. While these major sources are releasing toxicity into the air, us humans are unable to see the very tiny particles. When the particles are at high concentrations, they create haze in the sky. As soon as one breathes in that haze, the particles wreak havoc on one's health. The particles that are being suspended in the air are what scientists call PM 2.5. Particulate matter, or PM, is a common proxy indicator of air pollution. PM is a combination of sulfate, nitrates, ammonia, sodium chloride, black carbon, mineral dust, and mineral water. PM 2.5 has the power to travel deep down into our lungs and soon into our bloodstream. Looking at the table, China continues to have a higher death rate. For instance, as of 2016, 139.8 per 100,000 people is the average amount of both genders that have gotten either lower respiratory infections, lung cancers, heart disease, stroke, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. As for the Philippines, the country has a total of 116.7 per 100,000 that could have also gotten either of the disease I had mentioned earlier. The next table focuses on the PM concentration in both countries. Likewise, China ranks above the Philippines with a total of 49.2 micrograms per cubic meter, and the Philippines with 18.4. On the map, we can see that China's PM concentration indicates the country as a hotspot with poor air quality. The legend on the bottom left corner also indicates that PM of less than 10 micrograms per cubic meter is the WHO guideline of good air quality. However, both countries are exceeding that guideline. China suffers from the health-damaging polluted air. In fact, it has been said that this country was challenged to fight this war against pollution, and the country is still fighting. According to New York Times, the highest particulate concentration China has reached was 76 micrograms per cubic meter over the course of 24 hours. While 10 to 12 micrograms per cubic meter is considered good air quality, the air quality of China is definitely considered unhealthy. Because the particulate concentration has exceeded the air quality guideline, there have been strict limits on burning coal, new emission standards for power plants, heavy industry, and the construction of new coal plants around the main capital, Beijing. About 94% of China's air pollution is responsible for the following diseases. Amongst China's population, there has been a rise in chronic respiratory diseases and cardiovascular diseases as well. In fact, chronic respiratory illnesses have been accounted for the highest burden of the country. While chronic respiratory diseases are the highest, the population has also suffered from diabetes and cancer. Since 2015, the PM 2.5 of Beijing happened to be at 800 micrograms per cubic meter, while the suggested is also 25 micrograms per cubic meter when the highest hours reached. The PM of Beijing is 32 times the recommended guideline. Because Beijing has a very high population density, a rapid increase in vehicular traffic, and energy combustion with inefficient pollution control, PM and elemental components are significant to the air pollution. Worldwide, Beijing is ranked the city with the highest levels of air particles. Now, this study focuses on office workers and truck drivers that work particularly in the urban area of China. Both groups are exposed directly to traffic emissions or diesel exhausts. However, the office workers in this case represent the highly exposed residential population of Beijing to create a contrast between the office people and the truck drivers, who are being more exposed to every day. Overall, the data recorded took a look at the lung function of the truck drivers and the environmental status. Truck drivers were exposed to an average PM 2.5 of 126.83 micrograms per cubic meter, and office workers were exposed to 94.59. As for the elemental component, or the concentration of toxic elemental compounds, truck drivers suffered from 17.27, and the office workers are only exposed to 13.01. In conclusion, this tells us that the truck drivers are obviously being more exposed to the polluted air. As a result of the data taken by this experiment, the associations between the components and the PM 2.5 were stronger with truck drivers because the elemental components are most commonly found in the road dust, in which the drivers are being exposed to. According to the table, high concentrations of elemental compounds in PM 2.5 are associated with the decreased lung function. Amongst the data, these commonly found elemental compounds were found in the drivers because, of course, they are normally exposed to either the asphalt or cement-paved road dusts, in which relate to the traffic emissions. Moreover, the toxicity of these elements can be inhaled and travel deep into the alveolar sacs that can result in an inflammatory reaction. Metro Manila suffers from the busy streets filled with the combustion that is being released from tricycles, cars, trucks, buses, and jeepneys. While the issue continues to occur, officials predict that the expected 8,900 premature deaths can be avoided by 2030. However, the Philippines continues to suffer from high particulate concentrations that have reached 88 micrograms per cubic meter during the highest hour. In addition, outdoor air pollution in the Philippines is actually responsible for the 3.7 million deaths every year happening in the low and middle income regions. This study focuses on how volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, is an important group of air pollutants that contribute to two of the most serious air quality issues in the Philippines. For example, benzene or 1,3-butadiene have been a drive to high risks of cancer. Because the Philippines continues to deal with rapid industrialization and an increase of motor vehicles, the air is severely polluted. As a result of this study, the motor vehicles have been the major source as to why the country is suffering from polluted air. As a result, the study has found that the average concentrations of benzene, toluene, and oxaline in the urban area is much higher than the concentrations in the rural area of Manila. The concentrations of selected VOCs inside the vehicle were recorded 2 to 5 times higher than that of the ambient VOC concentrations in Manila. According to the table, toluene was recorded the highest concentration. In fact, toluene is a highly flammable liquid that can cause nausea and headaches when inhaled. Private sectors. In China, the country has been regulating or controlling coal and energy consumption of industries, focusing on removing outdated production facilities. Moreover, the government has been prioritizing nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxide, which are sources of coal pollutants, also emissions reductions for electrical power and petroleum refining, and lastly, they have been improving gasoline quality as well. As for the Philippines, the country has established the Philippines Clean Air Act since 1999, in which this act regulates air pollution. The government has also ensured that climate information is included in an integrated disease surveillance and response system to be alerted for climate-sensitive health risks. Furthermore, the country has been transitioning from fuels like coal to lower carbon sources to reduce any respiratory illness. As for public sectors, the transport sector of both countries has been responsible for an estimated 14% of global carbon emissions. It has been said that the increased use of public transport is most likely to result in a reduced amount of greenhouse gas emissions. As for healthcare systems, any healthcare activity contributes to the greenhouse gas emissions as well. In fact, they account for between 3 to 8% of greenhouse gas emissions, and the major contributing sources consist of inefficient energy consumption most of the time. Therefore, they have been coming up with solutions such as low-carbon energy solutions like solar, wind, or hybrid, developing combined heat power generation capacity in larger facilities to therefore improve the quality and reliability of energy services. China has an ongoing list of policies. However, I wanted to pinpoint the major ones. First is the facilitation of total emission control of major pollutants, or the country wants to reduce new increments of pollution discharge, and the total energy consumption should be reasonably controlled, and they should promote non-fossil fuel energy. Secondly, the country wants to improve comprehensive control of several kinds of air pollutants, and that is to intensify the control of industrial smoke and dust, and facilitate the upgrading of dust removal equipment of coal-fueled power and cement plants. And lastly, work on the expansion of the air quality monitoring network. SDG goal. This closely relates to Goal 13. Goal 13 is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. In terms of how air pollution interferes with climate change, let's say that the PM of air pollution comes from diesel engines and it happens to end up in the polar regions because it's circulating around the globe. Now, if that matter lands on snow or ice, it'll darken it, in which it reduces the amount of light reflecting back into space. Therefore, this can contribute to global warming. So, therefore, as a result, the slightest bit of PM can really negatively impact the world globally and not just a particular region. The policies that the country of the Philippines have are actually quite similar to those of China's, and these policies include the consideration of health implications of climate change mitigation policies, conducting valuation co-benefits of health implications of climate mitigation actions, and conducting a national assessment of climate change impacts, vulnerability, and lastly, to implement projects or programs on health adaptation to climate change. While it is difficult to lessen the amount of cars, trucks, or buses being used in the busy streets of China or the Philippines, both countries can do its best to set aside funding to promote electric cars. However, electric cars will require charging stations, in which that can be very pricey. Therefore, electric cars can obtain its source of energy through renewable energy like solar or wind, and that would result in a reduced amount of emissions because the car would not have to require gasoline. Another suggestion is for everyone to wear a mask when in the busy streets to avoid breathing in the toxicity and to avoid spreading cough droplets through the use of masks. Thank you.